Thank you so much. This is so nice to come back and see y'all. It is, I've taught at Tulane now for 25 years, so I've actually reached a strange part of my career where undergraduate students are now coming up to me and saying, you know, my mother had you. You know, and you're like, excuse me, what are we talking about here? You know, so yeah. Though I know I'm getting older because this year with the Academy Awards, just before the Academy Awards, TBS showed the 50 movies that had won the Academy Award in the past, and I turned it on when The Graduate was on, and for the first time ever, Mrs. Robinson looked hot. And I think that was a sign, really. So let's see. Though I'm actually looking forward to getting older and moving to one of those retirement communities in Florida. You know, did you ever go to these places? The male-female ratio is terrific. You know, it really is. It's great. I mean, if you're a guy and you can drive at night, you're George Clooney. You know, so it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be like high school with money. And actually, it's going to be a lot like college, right? People living in close quarters, a lot of drugs. You're probably saying the same thing. Hey, let's see. Don't take any of this too seriously. I want to give you a little confidence in me. This was a stock-picking contest where I went against, I guess, arguably one of the top financial minds in this country, Mike Ditka. And so I was able to beat the coach. And yeah, and I was the investment instructor for the Saints for a number of years, and it was before the bounty and all that. But it was funny because these NFL players, they're just like you and me. They're nothing like you and me, really. They're gigantic and young and very wealthy. And I used to use, I can't use the joke I used to use on this slide because the Saints have become so good. I used to say, why don't the Saints have a website? And that's because they've never been able to put together 3 W's. But that is not true, not true at all. And so I've replaced it with something I heard in the Midwest. The guy said to me, he says, what did Jesus say to the Cubs? I said, I don't know. He says, listen, don't do anything till I get back. So let's see, where are we? Oh yes, the segue. First of all, we're not entering another Great Depression. I know this is going to be a real disappointment to the media, but this is not where we're headed. If you look at the crash of '29 and the depression that occurred in the 30s after that, the government has embarked on a program that's completely the opposite of what dragged us into the depression of the 1930s. In the 1930s, they increased interest rates, they increased tariffs, and they slowed government spending to a trickle. We've got basically interest rates at 0, very little trade borders, barriers, and government spending at unprecedented levels. So you might like Ben Bernanke, or you might not like Ben Bernanke, but the truth of the matter is he's done a terrific job, and he is the nation's preeminent scholar on the Great Depression. That is what his doctorate work is on, and he actually wrote a book we use in class called The Essays of the Crash of '29. So in some ways, he was sort of born for the position he found himself in here. A recession usually lasts about 14 months. If you listen to the media, you'd think it was about 14 years. You know, it's like I'm watching CNN, I'm watching the Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, and they're talking about the economy, and now even I'm getting scared, you know, and I think to myself, damn, if my name was Wolf, I would not grow a beard. That would be the first thing I wouldn't do. But it's, we've had 2 recessions in the last 30 years, the early 1990s and the dot-com bubble in 2000, 2001. You remember that was a period when everybody wanted to buy stocks, particularly these internet dot-com companies. These were companies with no earnings, no cash flow, no assets. Who knew? I don't know why that didn't turn out better. I remember, I teach old-fashioned Ben Graham, Warren Buffett fundamental analysis, the same way people have been analyzing stocks for 100 years. And in the late 1990s, I looked like a dinosaur on campus because these dot-coms were doing so well. And I always remember I had a student come up to me and he said, Mr. Ricchiuti, I found a stock that I think is going to do like really well because like my friend Josh told me about it. And I'm looking at like we're doing in class, and I noticed it doesn't have a PE. I said, oh, there's a reason for that, Jimmy. It has no E. You know, there's no, it's like, Jesus. It was like, oh. It's like an angry old Italian man on campus, you know, as people say something in Italian. The body's in the trunk. You know, it's, let's see. And recessions is all the way you spin it, right? If you're a banker and you go to somebody's house and you knock on the door, and you say, hey, I'm here to foreclose. Well, those people are pretty angry. But if you go to the same house, knock on the door, and say, hey, you're going camping. I think that's a lot nicer. That's And I know you got to be politically correct when you get up in front of a group like this. I know this. I was giving a talk once, and a guy comes up to me at the end. He says, "Peter, I enjoyed the talk, and I like the jokes, but you said something you're not allowed to say anymore." I'm really taken back. I'm thinking, who could I have offended? And he says, "You used the term illiterate." And I said, "Yeah?" And he says, "Yeah, you can't say this is true. You can't say that anymore. You have to refer to them now as non-readers." I'm not kidding. This is how crazy it's got. So because the good thing is you can write whatever you want about them, because they can't read something. It's kind of a real blessing, silver lining. But let's see. This recession ended in July of '09. 75% of America still thinks we're in a recession. That's sort of interesting. And recessions always end, and the economy always rises to a higher plateau. I've been doing this for 33 years, and over the last 5 years, I keep hearing more times the four most dangerous words in finance. This time it's different, and it's never different. It is the same cycle over and over and over again. Market memory in this country is terrible. Nobody recognizes how cyclical this always is. Now the seven most dangerous words overall are, "Hey, we're getting the band back together." But that's a whole separate subject, though. Let's see. Oh, this I got this out of the Onion. White House jester beheaded for making fun of soaring national debt. But I wanted to talk about this because I don't think people really understand the way the debt works. First of all, you hear people talking about the debt in terms of raw numbers. That doesn't get you anywhere. You say we have 14 trillion in national debt or 683 grillion in national debt. That doesn't mean anything. You need to look at the debt as a percentage of the size of the U.S. economy, and that gives you the factor of leverage. How levered are you? And that's really what the whole issue is. And you can see, so the equation that economists use is national debt divided by GDP. And you can see we've been in worse shape than this before. In the war years, World War II, we were in worse shape than we are right now. We were more levered. And then when the war ended, it came down precipitously under Truman, fell under Eisenhower, fell under Kennedy LBJ, fell under Nixon Ford. It really bottomed at the end of the Carter administration. In other words, we had the least leverage. And that's why I always laugh at people that think we could solve all the nation's economic problems by paying off the debt or something. When we've had the lowest amount of debt leverage out there, that was a horrible economy right there. So then it came back up again under Bush Reagan. It fell under President Clinton, and this is another inflection point. At the end of Bill Clinton's administration, we had a surplus. People always point to that. Well, it's true. We had a surplus, and it was terrific. But it wasn't. We had a budget surplus. We brought in more money than we'd anticipated. That was great and everything, but it didn't mean we didn't have debt. We had a ton of debt. Then it soared under President Bush and soared under President Obama. But the real key here is that I think we're getting very close to getting that line, not to pay off. I don't think we have to pay off the debt. I don't think the best corporate structure is no debt. Individuals have mortgages. I don't think municipalities are best off without any debt. But what we need to do is to get that line to start to roll over again. And that's what you need to get investor confidence back. And I think you're going to see it. I think you're going to see it from a couple of different ways pretty quickly. First of all, there's probably going to be some higher taxes. Now, originally they were talking about raising the tax rate on income earned over $250,000 a year. Then you heard that maybe there would be raising the taxes on income earned over $500,000 a year. And then more recently, you heard the administration talk about raising income tax rates on income earned over $1 million a year. I mean, I don't know where that number is. I don't know where it ought to be. I'm not a policy wonk. I would say this, though. The bottom line is this, that if your family uses the term summer as a verb, you're probably going to pay higher taxes. That's what I'm thinking. It's just around, just to help you. That's a little bit. We've seen that the English majors always go, I got that one. So it's there's been some budget cuts. There's more to come. The Committee of 12 or the Dirty Dozen didn't do anything, but there are budget cuts inherent in the system. And the third is changes to entitlement programs. And the natural thing to say there is, Peter, why do you even bother putting that up there, because nothing's happened? I'm amazed after doing this for 33 years how close we're getting. When I first got in this business, I mean, up until, let's say, a few years ago, anytime a politician mentioned tweaking entitlement programs, that was the end of them. Is what we called in the business a third rail issue for a politician. It was like, where's Bob? Bob's gone. You know, and now you actually have, open meetings with finance people and accountants and actuaries and actuaries. Have you ever hung out with actuaries? That's a strange group. Actuaries is the kind of guy who goes into a restaurant, sees a beautiful woman, and thinks, hey, she'll be dead in 34 and a half years, It's just not real guys. But anyway, So I think we are going to tweak it. I think they're going to move Social Security to 70. I think there's a bunch of little things like that that are going to help, and they're going to even not only help mathematically, but help perception-wise that we're getting our arms around it. And then the bottom one is actually the denominator of the equation, higher revenue from a rebounding economy. People think the economy is shrinking. People have no idea. The economy has been growing for 12 quarters in a row. It's growing at about 2.5%. It's got to be really going at about 3.5% to get us really rolling in here. But it is growing. It is not shrinking. Or as my old college roommate used to say, and I'll never forget this, he used to always say, Peter, remember, it's not premarital sex if you have no intention of getting married. That's what he said. And oh, it kind of got me through the tough years, but let's see. This is interest payment on the debts, and this is kind of surprising. There's two interesting parts of this. First of all, it's showing you that we pay as little now in interest as we have since the mid-1970s. So, and the reason is, of course, is interest rates are so low. We're borrowing a ton of money, but rates are so low. So the two things this graph shows me is that we're not being eaten up income statement-wise by interest costs. It's just not happening. And the second is this, what this graph shows me is if anybody has an interest in keeping rates low, it's Uncle Sam. So, you know, I'm not saying there aren't going to be shifts back and forth, but Uncle Sam has a huge vested interest in keeping rates low. Some random thoughts. Tax evasion has added $3 trillion to the national debt over the past decade. Just, if you want to know where the healthcare problem really is, just 1 in 7 workers is of normal weight without a chronic health problem. That kind of sums it up. And then over the past 25 years, college tuition has increased at nearly 4 times the rate of inflation, and it's not all going to me. So it's, but that is true. This is a new program I'm running called Hiring Freeze, where we're going to freeze college graduates until the job market improves. But it's new. A lot of people aren't picking it up yet. But it's no, actually, the truth of the matter is that's not really true, because May of 2009 was the bottom for employment, as I see it at the university. May of 2010 was a little better. May of 2011 was pretty good. And this will be the best year we've had in about 6 years. So the job market is very much improving for college grads. I decided to put fictitious rich people throughout my presentation. That's Richie Rich, who was always kind of a personal hero of mine as a child. And wanted to talk about what moves the market, what moves stocks, and what moves the markets in general. And you need to know that since World War II, corporate profits are up 100-fold, and since World War II, stock prices have risen 90-fold. Now, two things. One, those are enormous numbers, and the other thing is that those numbers are pretty close together, and they're telling you that ultimately what moves a stock is the earnings behind the stock. That is the key variable. That's what you have to keep your eye on the ball on. The rest of it is noise. The rest of it is meaningless. The rest of it is like the buffet at a strip club. It's just not that important. And it's you brought the guy from New Orleans. That's how this was going to go, right? There's by the way, I'd like to report on New Orleans. New Orleans has made a fantastic comeback. You know, I would say New Orleans has been the greatest comeback since Lazarus. You know, and we we've had an amazing year. We had the Sugar Bowl, and then we had the BCS Championship and the Final Four, and Mardi Gras, and now we're in Jazz Fest. A lot of positives. Mayor Landry's done an amazing job. I sit on the city's revenue estimating committee, and so I see it kind of firsthand. And I'll tell you one thing you may not have heard about New Orleans is recently we were named the #1 city in the country for young entrepreneurs. It has become a hotbed for entrepreneurial young people coming into the city, and it is phenomenal. It has just created such a buzz. I have a new radio show I've been doing for about 8 months. It's going on to National Public Radio in June. It's called Out to Lunch. And what I do is at Commander's Palace, I bring a couple of young entrepreneurs in every week and interview them about their ideas and what they face. And it's made me the most optimistic guy in the city. You know, it's just fast. I'm a big boy. I know half of these aren't going to work, but just the fact that you got these people coming in with fresh ideas is just terrific.